if the ghost of a little girl was not the scariest thing in your house? We are taught to fear the dark, monstrous things, the entities that have never known life. But what if the true horror is a child's spirit, not because of what she does, but because of what she protects? In a quiet, unassuming home in Atchison, Kansas, a young couple discovered that the playful ghost of a girl named Sallie was just a curtain, and behind it waited a darkness that had been hungry for a very long time. The small, white frame house at 508 North 2nd Street looked like any other starter home for newlyweds Tony and Debra Pickman, who moved in during the early 1990s. It was a dream come true. The town was quiet, the house was affordable, and they were excited to start their lives together. They were vaguely aware of the local lore, a story about a young girl named Sallie who had died in the house around the turn of the century from a botched appendectomy. Her final moments filled with terror and pain as the doctor operated without sufficient anesthetic. The activity began subtly, as it so often does. The lights in the nursery they were preparing for their future child would flicker and dim, even after electricians found nothing wrong. They would hear the faint sound of a child's giggle echoing from the empty room, and their puppy would often stand at the doorway, whining and wagging its tail at something they couldn't see. Debra felt a sense of playful, innocent energy, believing the stories of Sallie were true, and that the young girl's spirit was simply making its presence known. Tony, however, experienced something different. While Debra would find toys neatly arranged in the center of the nursery floor, Tony would find his tools scattered or missing. He felt a constant, prickling sensation of being watched, an energy that was not playful, but distinctly hostile. The strange occurrences always seemed to ramp up when he was alone in the house. A targeted campaign of small-scale harassment that began to wear on his nerves and create a strange tension in his new marriage. The first undeniable encounter happened one evening as they were relaxing in the living room. All the stuffed animals in the nursery, which they had meticulously placed on a shelf, came tumbling down at once with a loud crash. When they rushed in, they found the toys arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. In the center of the circle was a single burnt-out match. There were no matches in the room, and the smell of sulfur hung heavy in the air, a scent that felt ancient and wrong. Debra, trying to rationalize the escalating events, reached out to psychics and paranormal investigators. A medium who visited the house confirmed the presence of a young girl named Sallie, describing her as mischievous but not malevolent. The psychic warned, however, that Sallie was not alone. She spoke of a much older, darker energy, a female presence filled with rage and hatred towards men. She cautioned Tony specifically, telling him that the entity saw him as a threat and that its anger was growing. The physical attacks on Tony began soon after. It started with small scratches appearing on his arms and back, thin red lines that he would discover after feeling a sudden, sharp burning sensation. He would be working in the basement, and a heavy tool would fly off a shelf, narrowly missing his head. The playful giggles that Debra sometimes heard were replaced, for Tony, by a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the nursery when he walked past. The activity centered on two specific areas: the nursery, Sallie's supposed room, and the basement, directly beneath it. Investigators recorded dramatic temperature drops in these spots, sometimes as much as 30 degrees in a matter of seconds. They captured electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, that were chillingly clear. Amidst the static, they recorded a little girl's voice whispering, "My mommy doesn't like you," followed by a deep, non-human voice that snarled, "Get out." The couple's life became a living nightmare. They couldn't sleep, startled by every creak and groan of the house. Tony began to grow gaunt and withdrawn. The constant barrage of spiritual and physical attacks taking a heavy toll. He would wake up with fresh, deep scratches on his chest and stomach, sometimes in patterns of 3, a number often associated with demonic mockery of the Holy Trinity. Debra was terrified, torn between her belief in the innocent spirit of Sallie and the undeniable violence being inflicted upon her husband. One of the most terrifying phenomena was the spontaneous outbreak of fires. Tony would be in his study, and a book on the shelf would suddenly ignite, the flames erupting from the pages for no reason. A dish towel hanging in the kitchen would start smoldering. These were not electrical fires. They were targeted, intelligent acts of arson, always occurring when Tony was near, as if the entity was testing the boundaries of what it could do. Its power seemingly growing with each passing day. Desperate, they allowed a paranormal television crew to document their ordeal. During the investigation, the crew captured some of the most compelling and terrifying evidence of a haunting ever recorded. As Tony lay on the nursery floor to conduct a provocation session, the cameras rolled as 3 long, bloody scratches slowly manifested on his bare back, welling up from beneath the skin as if drawn by an invisible claw. Tony cried out in pain. A visceral, undeniable moment of paranormal assault. During that same investigation, a psychic on the crew entered a trance-like state, speaking with a voice that was not her own. She described the 2 entities. She confirmed Sallie was a real spirit, a 6-year-old girl terrified of the other presence. The second entity, she claimed, was an older woman, a former tenant from the 1800s, who had been a practitioner of dark arts, and her spirit had become twisted and demonic. It was this woman, not Sallie, who was the source of the violent attacks. But even that explanation felt incomplete. The level of malevolence, the deep-seated hatred, and the raw power felt older and more primal than the ghost of a single human being. Some investigators began to theorize that the story of the angry woman was a misdirection, a more palatable explanation for something that was never human to begin with. They proposed that a demonic entity had attached itself to the house, using the tragic story of Sallie as a mask to gain the trust of its victims. The confrontation, the night that finally broke them, came without warning. Tony was home alone, attempting to do some repairs in the nursery, trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. As he stood on a stepladder, an unseen force violently shoved him. He was thrown across the room with such force that his shoulder was dislocated upon impact with the wall. He lay on the floor, helpless and in agony, as the room plunged into an unnatural, freezing cold. A large, black mass, darker than the shadows around it, began to coalesce in the corner of the room. It had a vague, human-like shape, but was impossibly tall, its form shifting and writhing like thick smoke. From the center of the mass, 2 points of dull, red light glowed like embers. Tony could feel a wave of pure, undiluted hatred wash over him. A malevolence so profound, it was physically painful. This was not a ghost. This was a predator. The entity glided towards him, the air crackling with energy. As it loomed over him, Tony saw, for just a second, the superimposed image of a small, terrified girl with blonde hair, her face a mask of silent screaming. She was trapped within the darkness, her image used as a shield or a puppet. Then the image vanished, and the deep, guttural voice filled the room, not through the air, but inside his head. "You are not welcome," it boomed, the words vibrating through his skull. He felt an immense pressure on his chest, as if a great weight was crushing the air from his lungs. He was pinned, unable to move, unable to breathe. He closed his eyes, bracing for the end, when suddenly the pressure vanished. The room returned to its normal temperature. The dark mass was gone. In its place, standing by the door, was Debra. She had come home early, her sudden arrival apparently breaking the entity's hold. That was the final straw. They fled the house that night, leaving nearly all of their belongings behind. They didn't pack, they simply ran. The physical and emotional scars were deep. Tony suffered from PTSD and was plagued by nightmares for years. Their dream home had become the source of their deepest trauma, a place where they had come face to face with a genuine and powerful evil that had nearly destroyed them. After the Pickmans left, the Sallie House did not remain quiet. It became infamous in the paranormal community, a magnet for ghost hunters, psychics, and thrill seekers. Subsequent owners and renters reported the same terrifying phenomena. The playful but unnerving activity of a child's spirit, and the violent, targeted attacks directed almost exclusively at adult men who lived in or investigated the home. The pattern of a dual haunting continued, solidifying its reputation. The house was turned into a tourist attraction, offering overnight stays for those brave enough to spend a night within its walls. The evidence continued to mount. Visitors would leave toys for Sallie, only to have them thrown violently at them. They would capture EVPs of the little girl's voice, sometimes humming a nursery rhyme, followed by a demonic growl. The scratches, the disembodied voices, and the moving objects became the house's grim calling card. One team of investigators conducted a unique experiment. They brought in a male sketch artist and a female sketch artist, neither of whom knew the history of the house, and had them sit in the nursery and draw what they felt. The female artist drew a sweet, smiling young girl with a bow in her hair. The male artist, sitting just a few feet away, drew a hideous, hag-like woman with a face contorted in rage, her hands like claws. This supported the theory of two distinct entities, but it didn't solve the core mystery of their relationship. Was Sallie a benevolent spirit, trying to warn people away from the more dangerous entity? Was she a tormented soul, forced into a terrible partnership with the demon? Her playful energy used as bait to lure in unsuspecting victims before the darker force revealed itself. The truth remained shrouded in speculation and fear. Some paranormal theorists believe the land itself is tainted. Atchison has a dark history, with its roots in the violent border wars, and its old cemeteries built over even older burial grounds. They propose that the house at 508 North 2nd Street was simply built on a patch of ground where the veil between worlds is thin, a place where a dark, non-human intelligence has always resided, long before the first foundation stone was ever laid. The story of Sallie, the girl who died on the operating table, might be entirely incidental to the haunting. Perhaps the demonic entity simply latched onto her tragic tale, a convenient and powerful local legend that it could weave into its own narrative. A story of a lost child is a powerful lure, capable of eliciting sympathy and lowering the guard of those who enter, making them more vulnerable to the true darkness that lies in wait. The physical evidence left behind is staggering. Countless photographs show strange anomalies, orbs, and shadowy figures. Audio recordings are filled with unexplained bangs, growls, and clear, disembodied voices. But the most compelling evidence remains the physical harm inflicted upon its visitors. The scratches, bruises, and burns that appear on their bodies from unseen hands. A brutal and undeniable calling card from the other side. The house continues to be a focal point of study and fear. It has been featured on numerous television shows, and its story has been told in books and documentaries. Each new investigation seems to uncover more questions than answers, deepening the mystery and cementing its status as one of the most actively and violently haunted locations in the United States. It is a place that challenges the beliefs of even the most hardened skeptics, Men who spend the night in the house often report a feeling of profound, inexplicable rage bubbling up inside them, an emotion that is not their own. They feel agitated, aggressive, and paranoid. It's as if the entity is not just attacking them physically, but attempting to infect them with its own hatred, turning them against their fellow investigators and loved ones. It is a form of spiritual warfare, a violation of the mind as well as the body. The legacy of the Sallie House is a chilling one. It serves as a stark reminder that the paranormal world is not always filled with gentle, lost souls seeking peace. It is a realm that also contains predators, entities of pure malice that see humans as things to be tormented and fed upon. The house is a testament to the reality of intelligent, powerful, and malevolent hauntings. For Tony and Debra Pickman, the haunting never truly ended. The trauma they endured became a permanent part of their story. They moved on, but the memory of the black mass in the nursery, the phantom fires, and the deep, bloody scratches remained. A constant reminder of the year their lives were hijacked by the supernatural. They were the first to truly document the horror, but they were far from the last to experience it. Today, the little white house still stands. To the casual observer, it is just a house, but to those who know its history, it is a wound on the landscape, a place where the membrane between our world and a much darker one has been torn open. Sallie may or may not be there, but something certainly is. It is awake, it is angry, and it is waiting. Visitors continue to leave toys and dolls in the nursery, offerings to the spirit of a little girl. They speak to her, sing to her, and ask her to play. They seek a connection with the child, hoping for a sign of her innocent presence. But with every toy that is moved, every giggle that is heard, they may simply be waking up the much darker thing that wears her memory like a mask. The ultimate, lingering question is the most terrifying one. We assume Sallie is a victim, a pawn in a demonic game. But what if that's wrong? What if, in the lonely, terrifying darkness of the afterlife, a little girl's spirit became so twisted by rage and pain that she herself invited something terrible in? What if the little girl is not the bait? What if she is the one holding the door open? The horror of the Sallie House is not just that it is haunted. The horror is in its duality, the twisted pairing of childhood innocence and demonic rage. It forces us to ask what we should truly be afraid of. The monster that growls in the darkness, or the smiling child who tells you it's safe to come inside and play.